Hello, welcome into my new weather series here on my channel entitled Weather Wall. This is a series that will chronicle different events ranging from severe to winter weather to tropical activity, or even in some specific cases, events that are loosely related to weather that may have had an impact on it down the line, such as volcanic eruptions. What you will see in these videos are extensive analysis, key details, why the event overall happened, what could have been different or what was different about the event, and the overall aftermath as well. With that being said, let's begin with episode 1. In this first episode, you will see the details surrounding one of the worst tornado events in February history, especially for Louisiana and Mississippi. All that and more coming up next on Weather Wall. The Mississippi Delta, also known as the Yazoo Mississippi Delta, or just simply the Delta, is a distinct northwest section of Mississippi, and it lies in the portions of Arkansas and Louisiana. This region sits between the Mississippi and Yazoo rivers. It has also been called as the most southern place on Earth. The Delta is 200 miles long and approximately 87 miles across at its widest point, which encompasses nearly 7,000 square miles of alluvial floodplain. This area is relatively flat, and it also offers better chances for those who storm chase down here to see storms from further distances away from them. However, there are still some areas that encompass tall trees and forests. On an annual basis, Mississippi is highly likely to see at least one tornado within 25 miles of a particular point. As a matter of fact, in the month of February, the climatological peak per se for tornadoes is in Mississippi and Alabama, and essentially the same thing goes for a tornado of significant strength in the EF2 plus category. This data is based off of recent updated climatological averages. Mississippi as a whole, including the Delta, has a long troubled history with significant long-track tornadoes. In fact, there have been at least over 60 violent tornadoes in the state's history overall. A violent tornado is rated as EF4 or EF5. On the old Fujiya scale, it was F4 and F5. A more recent event that showcases a glimpse of the state's troubled history was the Rolling Fork high-end EF4 tornado back on March 24th, 2023. This devastating tornado caused extensive destruction not only in Rolling Fork, but also in Silver City as well. This tornado killed nearly 20 people. These tornado events, especially ones that are particularly devastating, always serves at least a couple of reminders. One, we must always be able to effectively communicate the threat to the public, no matter what. Also, two, people should be able to have viable shelter options to ensure that their family and friends are safe. But that's not always the case. Sunday, February 21st, 1971, featured a significant combination of ingredients for severe thunderstorms, some of which included a strong upper-level disturbance and an increasingly unstable air mass at the surface. Before I get into the main part of the event, it is important to observe what the conditions were like overall in the atmosphere earlier that same morning. Displayed here is a weather sounding from 6 a.m. Central Standard Time from Jackson, Mississippi. The first thing I want to highlight here for you is the strong presence of wind shear. Wind shear is the change in wind speed and direction with height. We already had low and mid-level wind speeds in excess of up to 45 to 60 miles per hour and upper-level wind speeds of up to 80 to 90 miles per hour. The next thing to take note of is the lifted index. We had a value of negative 6.9 already at this time of the day. This indicates that the atmosphere was already moderately to potentially strongly unstable, which is already supportive of severe weather potential. If this were to have been a positive value, that would indicate the atmosphere is stable. Speaking of an unstable atmosphere, we already had over 1,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE. This is the measure of atmospheric instability. CAPE was only going to rise more substantially into the early afternoon hours, as surface temperatures rose to near 80 degrees in the Mississippi Delta and dew points that would be well into the 60s. I also want to highlight the area of the CAPE in this sounding. It is in between the yellow line and the first white line just to its left. The area that you would want to focus in on is from about that 2,500 meter line all the way up to about the 12,030 meter line. That is where the area of available potential energy, also known as CAPE, lies. And right below that is what's known as a cap or SIN. We have a value of about 24 for SIN. This indicates a weak cap in the atmosphere that tries to prevent efficient thunderstorm development. A larger cap number would indicate a stronger cap that would more than likely shunt any thunderstorm development. The last thing I want to note from this graphic is storm relative helicity. This is a measure of the potential for a thunderstorm's updraft to rotate, which is a key ingredient for the formation of supercells and tornadoes. It quantifies the amount of wind shear and turning in the wind profile relative to the motion of a storm. A baseline number to look out for is around 150 meters squared per second squared. That unit is the measurement of storm relative helicity. In this case, on this morning, we already had a value of 377, which already indicates potential for stronger tornadoes. To elaborate more on the wind profile, let's take a look at that from Jackson, Mississippi later that evening into the early nighttime hours. Here depicted is a hodograph, otherwise known as a wind profile, of the change in wind speed and direction with height. Of course, those corresponding numbers you see, the lower the number, the higher up in the atmosphere. You can see here that the wind speeds are already getting stronger as you go higher up in the atmosphere. The one thing to take note of here is the storm relative helicity value of 640. This is more than enough for potential of strong tornadoes to occur, or should I say one factor of that, along with potential for violent tornadoes as well. To further illustrate these parameters, now let's go ahead and show you these Era 5 reanalysis maps of the upper level winds. Let's start off with the mid-level wind map, otherwise known as the 500 millibar chart from 6 a.m. Central Standard Time on February 21st. This disturbance, also known as a trough, is currently lagging back behind in the southern plains into northern Mexico. You can also see here the main area of lift and forcing along with this disturbance is in these areas as well. Along with that too, our lower level wind response on the 850 millibar map was already pretty potent looking in the southeastern United States, especially into eastern Texas, with estimated low level winds of already up to 50 plus miles per hour. And of course, as I just showed you on that sounding, the winds were already on the stronger side aloft. By the time we got to the start of the event, the mid-level disturbance had already made a bit of progress to the east. Its main area of lift has now positioned itself much closer to the Mississippi Delta along with the forcing, and the peak of the mid-level jet was anchored just due to the west. The response from the lower level wind field of the eastward progression of the mid-level jet was absolutely on full display as well. With all the ingredients set in stone, this led to the development of at least over a dozen tornadoes, including 3 long-lived, violent tornadoes. Given that a volatile setup was in place, the National Weather Service in Jackson, Mississippi issued tornado watches approximately 1 hour before the first violent tornado began. Tornado watch number 39 was issued at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, including portions of eastern Louisiana, western Mississippi, and even southeast Arkansas. 2:50 p.m. Central Standard Time. A strong supercell was moving northwest of Crowville, Louisiana, containing a developing wild cloud and funnel cloud. At 3:08 p.m., a significant tornado was born to life just south-southeast of Delhi, Louisiana. Shortly after forming, the tornado would go on to move northeast at an average forward speed of roughly 52 miles per hour. This is nearly 1 mile per minute. It would strike the small community of Waverly along U.S. Route 80 after the tornado crossed I-20. Along and northeast of U.S. Route 80, the tornado would go on to level a number of small homes at F5 intensity. However, some of these homes may not have been well constructed. For the next bit of time, the tornado would track through mostly wooded areas and farmland until it got into far northeastern Louisiana. At this point, it would strike the Melbourne settlement on Pekin Road, a short distance south of Transylvania, near Alsatia. In Melbourne, the tornado would go on to destroy a pair of mobile homes and 7 homes. 13 other mobile homes, 11 outbuildings, and a mature pecan grove were severely damaged as well. Also, cars and agricultural implements were also tossed about, but only minor injuries occurred. In all, this tornado would kill 11 people and injure 18 others in Louisiana. Although some sources do not list the 11th fatality, after striking Melbourne, the tornado would go on to cross the Mississippi River and roar into Mississippi. While the tornado was in the vicinity near Transylvania, Louisiana, the Weather Service down in Jackson, Mississippi would issue a statement around 3:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. This statement made mentions of tornado watch replacements, continuation of watches, tornadoes being cited by law enforcement, continuations of tornado warnings, and also mentions of other storms in the area, including a tornado being indicated by radar farther off to the north near the small community of Drew, Mississippi from a different storm. One interesting thing to note is as the tornado was crossing into Mississippi into the region of Poindexter Island, the Weather Service in Jackson picked up on an observation of a hook gecko approximately 5 miles south-southwest of Rolling Fork, Mississippi. The tornado would go on to just barely pass to the west of Rolling Fork. While the tornado was in Issaquah County, Mississippi, it would strike the Lockwood Plantation, and shortly afterwards, it would reach its maximum width of 2,000 yards wide, which is over 1 mile across. Then the tornado would move into Sharkey County, Mississippi, where it would encounter Cometa Plantation. It would destroy a cotton gin, the surrounding store, and nearby homes at the plantation, where 3 more people were killed. Then, the tornado would cause a catastrophic hit on Delta City, with much of the entire community destroyed. 31 homes and most businesses were destroyed, some of which were swept away, killing 8 people in the community. Then, the tornado would go on to level more farms and claim 4 additional lives, also impacting Mound Lake Plantation and far western sections of Isola. Afterwards, the tornado would then set its sights on the town of Inverness. It would race into the town as a large wedge tornado, showcasing absolutely no mercy on the area. Up to approximately 80 to 90% of Inverness would be destroyed, including many homes, businesses, outbuildings, the entire central business district, city hall, an elementary school, and the 3 largest churches in town. The tornado would go on to level the northwestern side of Moorhead, causing an additional 4 fatalities before the tornado finally lifted near the small town of Schlatter. The historical significance of this particular tornado is that it marks the only official F5/EF5 tornado to have hit the state of Louisiana since records began in 1950, and it is also the only F5/EF5 tornado to occur within the month of February. At the time, this was the deadliest F5 tornado since March 3rd of 1966. That was the Candlestick Park tornado that hit in South Jackson, Mississippi. Unfortunately, this was later eclipsed by an EF5 tornado on April 27, 2011. That was the infamous Phil Campbell Hackleburg tornado in Alabama during the 2011 super outbreak. That tornado killed over 70 people. Well-known tornado researcher Thomas Grazillis rated this tornado an F4 in 1984 and 1993, but in 2001, he ended up accepting the official F5 rating, but he also listed it as a tornado family. But, as I just mentioned not too long ago, that later study of aerial imagery revealed that 104-mile path. Overall, this tornado killed 47 people and injuring 400 plus more. Throughout a good chunk of the F5 tornado's lifespan, another violent, long-lived tornado was carving out a path of destruction just to the southeast of where the F5 tracked. This tornado, commonly dubbed as the Cary-Pugh City tornado, was the deadliest and the longest lasting of the three violent tornadoes on February 21st. It was also likely a tornado family. It first touched down just east-northeast of Fittler, approximately 6 to 8 miles southwest of Cary, and would also move northeast rapidly at an average forward speed of 50 to 60 miles per hour. Early in the tornado's lifespan, it would strike and completely destroy the Havana plantation, causing 14 fatalities. The destruction here was actually among the most extreme in the entire outbreak, and then it would go on to strike southern sections of Cary, causing an additional 13 deaths. So, early within the tornado's track, there was already 27 fatalities, and the terrifying thing was, this tornado was just getting started with its path of destruction and terror. One important thing to note is that after the tornado hit southern sections of Cary, this tornado would go on to barely miss Rolling Fork to the east, and just earlier, the F5 tornado that I was talking about passed just to the west of town. So during this event, Rolling Fork practically split the difference. On top of that, throughout the first half of the Cary-Pugh City F4 tornado's lifespan, the Delhi to Inverness F5 tornado was still ongoing just to the north of the F4. This tornado, of course, would dissipate around 5:10 p.m. At that point, the Cary-Pugh City tornado was ongoing. The tornado would pass just over 2 miles to the west of Belzoni before it went on to practically erase the small community of Pugh City. About 50 homes and a number of stores were either irreparable or obliterated, and up to around 26 people were killed in the small town. Unfortunately, Pugh City could not recover from the tornado and soon ceased to exist. After Pugh City was annihilated, the tornado went on to graze the southeastern side of Swifttown, where 3 residences were destroyed, and then it hit northwestern portions of Morgan City, and up to around a dozen homes were destroyed as well, along with several notable structures. Then, downtown Greenwood was spared a direct hit, but just about 3 miles to the west-northwest of the town, the tornado would speed over Highway 82, killing 2 people in a vehicle. By 5 p.m., the Weather Service in Jackson, Mississippi would issue an extension of a tornado warning to 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for locations in West Mississippi, and also taking note of several tornadoes that were indicated by radar and reported by the public on the ground in the Delta area at around 4:45 p.m., with these tornadoes continuing to move rapidly to the northeast. The tornado then sped into Grenada County and raced through the Malmaison State Wildlife Management Area, obliterating a number of trees in the area. At this point, I would like to give a quick shout out to TornadoTalk.com for their hard work on the extra detail that they put into with this tornado event. The reason why I'm saying that is because this next part here about this particular tornado at this specific point comes from their summary on this tornado. As the tornado entered Grenada County, USGS aerial imagery from years later still showed an impressively wide swath of entirely raised forest. Here, they decided on a conservative maximum width of 2,140 yards wide, also about a mile and a quarter in diameter, though this could be an underestimation due to the absence of finer scale imagery close after the event. Beyond that point, southern and eastern outskirts of Tillatoba were impacted with about a half a dozen structures heavily hit, and then the tornado skipped along into Holly Springs National Forest, where it would eventually dissipate about 7 miles northeast of Tillatoba at approximately 6:05 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, this is the point where details over the years about this tornado became quite murky. Overall, the SPC and NCDC, known as National Climatic Data Center, listed a path length of 202.1 miles originally. Thomas Grazillis states that a family of tornadoes tracked for 160 miles, but the survey report lists a path length of 159 miles, but it also includes that a roughly 15 to 20 mile segment was not continuous with occasional skips. According to TornadoTalk.com, detailed analysis of the damage indicates a total track length, accounting for all twists and turns, of 114.80 miles. It is also worth noting that they found evidence through damage reports and aerial imagery of multiple significant tornadoes that continued near and even past Oxford into northern Mississippi, which were lumped into a single track by other sources that ultimately continued in the far southern portions of Tennessee. Despite all of the mixed info about this tornado, it does not change the fact that 57 people lost their lives, and it became the deadliest tornado of the 1970s. Yes, the same decade that had the 1974 super outbreak in it. The deadliest tornado from that outbreak was Xenia, with up to 32 fatalities, and up to 800 people were injured from the Cary Pugh City F4 tornado. Before I move on to the last violent tornado of the day, there is other information that I want to mention about once the storm got past Tillatoba and moved by Oxford, Mississippi. The director of the University of Ole Miss Seismographic Observatory, Fred Folwell, said that the graphs on a recording vertical seismograph in the engineering department at Oxford indicated that 5 low-pressure centers of either a tornado overhead or a tornado system passed over or near the university Sunday night. He explained that tremendous barometric pressure changes associated with the passage of high or low pressure cells causes a vertical seismograph to note their passage. Very drastic changes indicate a tornado overhead or a tornado system. The center of the first indication was at about 6:40 p.m. He believed this to correspond with a touchdown in the northwest corner of the Ewing Mobile Home Park, where one trailer was demolished, in association with other damage nearby. The seismograph indicated the largest low-pressure center passed through at around 7 p.m. This corresponded with a touchdown approximately 5 miles northeast of the university campus in a wooded area north of Oxford and Highway 30 on Woodson Ridge. There, the swath of destruction was a half-mile wide and 10 miles long and extended into the Holly Springs National Forest. It would go on to destroy approximately 1,000 acres of timber, 2 miles of telephone and power company lines, and also numerous rural homes. It had also put the university's principal seismographic observatory station north of Oxford temporarily out of service. The smallest low-pressure center passed through at 7:20 p.m. This he correlated with a tornado that previously destroyed over 30 mobile homes at the Mobile City Trailer Park on Highway 6 west of Oxford. Other low-pressure systems were recorded on the campus at 7:40 and 7:55 p.m., but they have not been related to specific damage and might have been funnel clouds aloft. The final violent tornado of this event would touch down at 5:06 p.m. Not long after touching down, it would destroy a handful of barns and homes, including a guest house near Bovina. Then the tornado spent many miles over wooded areas before crossing I-20, destroying 4 chicken coops, a church, and 3 homes. Next, it passed through and pretty much destroyed Little Yazoo, where many homes, businesses, and a church were leveled and swept away, resulting in 4 fatalities. About halfway into the Little Yazoo tornado's lifespan, a radar shot from Jackson, Mississippi's Weather Service office showed the cell running just ahead of a line of heavy thunderstorms, with the Cary Pugh City F4 tornado still ongoing well off to the north-northeast. Beyond Little Yazoo, near the town of Bentonia, it killed half a dozen more people and destroyed additional homes. Overall, the Little Yazoo-Bentonia area had 12 homes leveled, damaged or destroyed 72 additional homes in Yazoo County, communities of Midway, Benton, and Roadside. In Holmes County, it struck the community of Brosville, extensively damaging homes, barns, chicken coops, and sheds. The tornado, after 1 hour and 10 minutes, finally dissipated near Lexington. In all, many homes are leveled along the tornado's path. TornadoTalk.com has a path length of roughly 72.75 miles, with a maximum width of just under 1 mile wide at 1,510 yards. Up to 13 people were killed by this tornado, although there may have been a few more fatalities that were unaccounted for. The following day, a newspaper headline entitled "Killer Tornadoes Slash Across Delta" was emblazoned on the front of the Delta Democrat-Times. The word choice of slash was an accurate, grim description of what these tornadoes did on February 21, 1971. In total, just over 120 people were killed. A total of at least over a dozen tornadoes touched down in the Mississippi Delta region across northeast Louisiana, western Mississippi, and southeast Arkansas, although there are likely several other undocumented tornadoes that occurred on this day. This tornado outbreak would become the second deadliest outbreak on record for the month of February, only behind the 1884 Enigma outbreak in the southeastern United States. February 21st is also the fourth deadliest day for tornadoes in Mississippi state history. As of early 2026, only the 1974 super outbreak, the 2011 super outbreak, and the Joplin tornado disaster have since surpassed the loss of life from the February 21st, 1971 tornado outbreak in the United States. Despite timely issued tornado warnings with an average lead time of around an hour in the worst hit areas, why was the death toll so high? A big contributing factor to this was due to the poor construction quality of homes. Few of the homes in these areas were well constructed, and many lacked basements or other safe areas. Many residents were reportedly aware of the danger, but they could not find shelter in time. While the system was particularly devastating in the Mississippi Delta region, its effects were much more widespread into the eastern United States and up into the Ohio Valley as well. There was even a blizzard in the plains too from the system. Strong to severe thunderstorm winds were generated from Texas to Kentucky and into North Carolina. Even Indiana and Ohio had confirmed tornadoes from this system the following day on February 22nd, and there was also large hail in Alabama and Ohio as well. One other piece of critical information to quickly bring up about February 21st was that an internal assessment by the Mississippi Power and Light Company determined that its infrastructure incurred the greatest wind-related damage in the company's history at that time. Roughly half of its transmission towers were damaged in both Sharkey and Humphreys counties.